Hello, welcome to another episode of The Money Journey. I am Jay Ann Behringer, your host. This is our little series on just real life snippets of people and their money and their lives. And so now we have on a financial advisor who is so wonderful. You're going to love her. Her name is Nancy Gallagher. Nancy is a financial advisor with nearly 30 years in the financial industry. She's also a financial coach. And she's worked with every type of person from millionaires all the way down to people below the poverty line. She takes a detailed, holistic approach to financial work to tailor the plan to where a person is instead of kind of making something up that works for everybody. There are no cookie cutters here. Please welcome with me, Nancy. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nancy Gallagher is also my mom. So I'm a little biased, a little partial, but I've seen the work that she can do. And I think you are just going to be blown away by today's episode. I'm just so excited for you.
Thanks, Jan. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Honored to be here. Very exciting to be interviewed by your daughter.
So, Mom, please tell me what it is that's your title and sort of like your synopsis of what you do.
Okay. So I tell people I wear two hats. I'm a financial advisor and I'm a financial coach. I find them very completely different job descriptions. The financial advisor helps people with preparing for retirement, a college savings plan, investing, things of that nature, your 401k. A financial coach helps you with your cash flow system. And a lot of times I will start people out on the financial coach side, let's get that cash flow management down so that you can save money. And then once that savings reaches a certain point, we're going to flip you over to the advisory side and get it invested in an approach that will help your life in the future. So two different hats, and I love them both.
So tell me okay, so this is interesting because I think most people, when they say, oh, I need a financial advisor, they're thinking that person's going to help them with their budgeting, their account management. Like, what kind of accounts do they need? Like, they're going to give them that kind of welcome experience to adulting life, right? So tell me the truth about that.
Right. My experience is that most financial advisors, they might help you create a little cash flow plan. They might, say 20% here, do 30% here, do the 30-20-20 rule and, do this and here you go. And then you kind of have to figure out how that works in your life, how you take your two different paychecks and put the 20% where it needs to go. Is it 20% pre-tax or post-tax? Stuff like that. So you're kind of still left with, you have guidance, and I'm sure the person will, fill in a few more of the blanks. But what I do on my coaching side is I go in the weeds with you. I go in the weeds. We find out about your bills, when they're due, the paychecks that come in. Is it bi-weekly paycheck or twice a month, So we get in the weeds and I'm holding your hand through the whole thing. I'm telling you what accounts you should open up and here's what this account's going to do and what the other account's going to do. So yeah, a lot more hand holding, a lot more, just a lot more hands-on guidance.
Yeah, and I am so looking forward. I think everyone's so looking forward to hearing more about how that works and what that looks like and how they can use the information you have today to put it into their finances. So exciting. But let's kind of ground everybody in. Tell me how you became a financial coach instead of a financial advisor, where people are like, oh, I'm going to go to this financial advisor, and an advisor's like, no, if you don't have $250,000, I don't want to talk to you. Because that's where the money is, right? That's where they're incentivized. But you were like, no, people need to know how to manage their money because no one's talking about it. Tell us how you got into that and how you chose to go that route instead of just going the typical advisory only route.
Well, I did start out as an advisor, and then I ended up with people coming to me who really didn't need the, investment sort of direction. They really just needed more of this coaching. But then I didn't really have a way of charging for it. So I ended up doing a lot of it for free. And then that's not helping anybody. It's not helping me. So that's when I opened up a separate business and figured out a way to charge for the coaching services to really help people meet the goal and the pain point and the need that they truly have, in a way that just makes it work on both sides. So that kind of evolved from there. But another thing that I used is that, I was a single mom for a while and I wasn't good at it. I've made every financial mistake in the book. So I want people to know, if you contract my services, there's a no judgment zone because I've done it all. Run up credit cards that I couldn't pay back, bought a timeshare, and let's not get going down the timeshare thing, okay? But let me tell you, for the most part, not not my best financial self, loaned money to people who didn't pay it back, but really said they would. Let me tell you, I've done it all. And life is full of second, third, and fourth chances. And that's really what I want people to know. Just because you blew it up, messed it up, a year ago, doesn't mean that you can't get out of that. That's going to take some work, but that's the other thing. I kind of feel like if you're going through it with somebody who's helping you, you're not alone. Chances are, and I've seen this, there's far more chances for success and for you to not create those same financial mistakes that you may have done in the past. So, and I've seen the freedom that the burden that's lifted when people are addressing these things and having someone to talk to about, I feel like I should be doing this or that, talking out some of their financial pain points and resolutions. So, yeah, so that's a lot of what I brought to the table, wanting to help people that have going through some of the many things that I've gone through.
Beautiful. Is there anything else you wanted people to know about your story? Because I think it's very riveting.
Oh, yeah. So actually, your dad and a lot I draw upon when I help couples is I draw upon when I was married to your dad. And back in the day, so we're talking the 80s, late 80s and through the 90s, okay, you can only pay for things one of two ways. You could only pay for it with cash or you could write a check. Can you imagine? I mean, going to the grocery store and writing a check, right? If you didn't have cash. So, and there was no online banking for the most part. You had to wait till the statement came to you the month following to see where everything was. Okay. And so we ended up writing checks and we had this big checkbook and we would think that if we wrote everything down, we'd be able to, he had opened up QuickBooks or something similar to that. We would get it all down and we'd figure it out, but it was a mess. It was a mess. We would take, money out of the ATM machine and then we try to write on the little slips of the receipts you get what we spent it on. There was no tracking system, really. We had kids, money was coming in and going out. We had no idea where it was going. And then to top it off, he would take over the finances for about 3 months. And then I was trying real hard to save money or do this or that. And then he'd say, you gotta stop spending. And I'd say, but where's our money going? And because we didn't really have a system and there wasn't that many good systems available, he couldn't really tell me, and then I'd say, well, let me try doing it for, 3 months. And so I would start doing the finance. At least if a person's doing the finances, they are getting a little more in touch with where the money's going. They just couldn't really categorize it all. And then he'd say to me, and I'd say to him, okay, stop spending money. And he'd say, where's our money going? So we kind of, it didn't become a mean point of contention. It was just a frustration that one kind of knew more and the other didn't. And so we didn't know, we weren't on the same page on where our money was going. Plus, when you have children and a house and cars, your life is so much more complex. Okay. But back in those days, we didn't have a system to really help us track and understand that. Thankfully now, fast forward 20 25 years, we've got online banking, we've got point of sale. Point of sale is huge. You know, you didn't have to take out the cash and then you had this extra buck or two or 10 or whatever, you know, although cash system is a good system. You know, you could just spend what you needed at the grocery store and you would see it deducted, you know, on the online banking. And so both sides can easily see where the money's going. But, you know, I take it a little step further than that. But yeah, a lot of what I've learned, you know, just being married and trying to make that work 25 years ago, and then now, and then going through my singlehood and trying to make it work, you know, is just kind of school of hard knocks, baby. School of hard knocks.
That's right. So tell me about some stages of life where people are commonly having issues or just need a little more guidance. Like maybe somebody's, you know, used to be great at their finances and then stuff changed and they're not sure why they're not great at them all of a sudden or stuff like that. So tell us about the four kind of stages of life where you run into common financial issues.
Yes. So there's the first stage is the newly launched. This would be a man or woman who maybe they graduated college, they got the first job, maybe they didn't go to college, but they're now working at a decent job full time. They may be still living at home, and the parents now feel like, okay, I either need to see that you're saving, or paying back your student loans, or I want you to, you know, pay your car insurance or pay your phone bill, you know. And a lot of times parents will pay me to kind of work with their newly launched child to set up this cash flow system. Because right now, most likely they have one bank account and maybe the parents used to put money in it when they were in college or what have you. And now they've got a little bit more, their life's getting a little more complex. They have to start paying some bills. Okay. So there's that stage. Okay. Then there's the couples. Then maybe you get married and you're a couple now. You know, two can live almost as cheaply as one, but they can also spend, you know, like two, you know. So
Or six.
right. And so that's a whole nother ballgame because now you've got somebody else's financial perspective. You've got their financial trauma, which we all have, or financial experience, or, you know, we don't even know is embedded in us and back in our mind. So you've got a lot more going on. Plus you would have children, cars, a house. Your life is very complex compared to when you were just living at home and had to pay your car insurance and your phone bill, you know, but we want to get you to a good system to really help that and help your marriage. I mean, I really feel like I want to go to these wedding trade shows and, you know, when they, you know, next to the floral lady and the photographer lady, like, talk about your finances, your financial discussion, you know, save your marriage before it even begins, you know, put in marriage insurance here, you know, because if you can be on the same page financially, you've covered 75% of the reason why typically people divorce. You know, yeah, I feel like I could be a marriage saver, you know. Tina, the marriage saver, you know, well, whatever. Get a little dramatic here. Okay, the third thing is then singlehood, maybe after couplehood. So maybe you didn't, your marriage didn't make it through the couplehood for a variety of reasons, doesn't have to be financial. But now you're maybe a single mom or a single person. And so if you didn't really know what system your ex used, you know, now you're trying to figure out your own system and what works for you. And I work with a lot of single moms, and you know, and that is complex because now you still got kids and money going out, and now you may have less income. And so we have to kind of work through that and talk about a lot of things with that. And then the final stage is the elderly. So maybe you're at the point, I have several clients in their 80s, they're still living alone, they love the independence, but they feel like sometimes their life's a little simpler, okay? But sometimes they're just feeling overwhelmed by processing the mail and, you know, some of the bills, and you know, they might have home health care, like some home health aide helping them, and you have to pay that, you have to pay the service, and then you get reimbursed if you have long-term care policy. So there's some hoops you got to go through. They might have, they definitely have mail overwhelm. How do I take back some of these Amazon purchases, or do their taxes if they didn't have a person who did their taxes, or preparing to send the details to their tax person. So there's some things there with the elderly. And sometimes, just like when you're young, you don't want your parents in all of your financial business. When you're elderly, you don't want your kids in your financial business, or you may not want that. You know what I mean? And then if you have more than one sibling and you invite one in, and then that person knows all, just easy to have me come in, this third party, and, saying, let's do this. And I keep very good notes, because that's important, that any child at some point can look back and see the different things that I've done and worked on. And that's another thing. It's just keeping track and noting what we accomplished in our meetings. And that's true with all 4 of the stages, that I send people a little, email summary with a lot of bullets, because when you're in the middle of anything like this, you're writing a couple of notes down, but I don't want you to feel like, and so getting a little email summary afterwards, when you've had time to sleep on whatever we've gone over, you can look at it. And again, I think that just reinforces the positive step that people are taking to better themselves financially. I mean, and bettering yourself financially doesn't mean getting a higher paying job, although could be. It means being intentional and knowing where my money is going. And it doesn't mean you're stingy or frugal. I don't like to use the word budget. I like to use the word spending plan. It means living the life that you'd like to live. But yes, there are some yeses and there are some nos. On no matter what stage of life is in, there's some yeses and nos. And so the important thing is to find out what yeses really do you really enjoy. And that's some of the things we talk about as well. So there you go, 4 stages there. Let me just recap: newly launched, couples, singlehood, and elderly.
I love that. Yeah, before we keep going, can you come back to this spending plan concept? Because I think you hit on something really important. And so there's this concept of having more money. There is is all about getting more money, right? Feeling comfortable, feeling free, feeling safe. There's a focus on getting more money. And then when things aren't like going well, I think a lot of people run and say, oh, we need to stop spending money. And those 2 things are at the very wide periphery of all of the stuff that's in between, that's really functioning the financial everything financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that was probably the most important thing that I think, if anyone walks away with anything at all, that's what I want them to understand, is we can't obsess on getting the better job or decreasing the spending, because those are fear-based, right?
Right.
Those are completely fear-based. I'm going to go to extremes and say, I have to make more money, I'm going to get a second job, or I'm going to stop spending on, necessities, like I'm going to not drive anywhere. What's the in between look like? And why is it that we get to one side or the other? And who are the people who most often go to one side or the other? And if you have a spending plan, or if you have these systems in place, do you end up, like, when you get in that fear moment, going one way or going the other way? Or do you feel more safe and more trusting of the system you're working with?
That's a very good question, because you're right. If the first knee-jerk reaction I think a lot of people have when they feel like, we know we're in some financial dire straits, is to either go out and make more money or stop spending. Okay. And the answer might be, most likely, it might be some of both. But if you don't know where your money is going, you don't know how much more do I need to make, or how much do we need to cut back. Okay. And that's why getting into the weeds really helps. And I know couples may have tried to do this before, but again, sometimes even in the best marriages, there's some baggage with each other. Okay. And having a third party here where I say, look, let's yell out, we're going to take your bank statements. I'm going to create an Excel spreadsheet. You just yell out what you spent. Okay. Electric bill, $200, grocery, $40, and then I keep 2 columns and we go over that. So by getting into the weeds, 2 things happen. You really understand where your money's going, just like a fire hose. It's just kind of, oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, look at that. The second thing is, a lot of times we find places where they can save money. Okay. I try to get people in the budget plan for electric or their gas, for their home, because that just keeps it even. It doesn't, but the other thing is they're like, oh, I meant to cancel that. Could be a subscription, which we're all stuck, we all kind of, those are the little nasty cockroaches we've got to, find and decimate. But it could be I'm just finding over and over again, people go, oh yeah, I know, I need to get such and such a refund for that. Once you're in the weeds, you start seeing the things, and we're afraid to get into the weeds because we're looking at it up here and it looks like, oh, who wants to go into that mess and just pulling out the grass and the weeds from the flowers and try to find these little flowers. Who wants to do that? I don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
So by working with me, first of all, the time is set aside. Okay, this is what we're going to do, and that's one. Second thing is you're not doing it alone. And we're not going to go off on tangents, usually with your spouse, because you're working with someone. And so we're going to stick to the focus. And, I think a lot of it takes away the knee-jerk reaction when you have a better picture of where your money's going. And see, I work with people and I create that picture. So I'm not telling you to, there is homework you need to do, but the bulk of it I'm doing with you. And then we talk about it. And then there's other homework you do. So it's just being willing to descend into this project. And I know when have kids and a fast life, it's kind of the last thing you're like, that's one more thing I got to do. I don't feel like doing that. Well, it's an investment in your time and in your relationship and in your family by having a good cash flow management system that keeps you and your spouse on the same page.
When you have worked, I love this. I love all this. When you have worked with couples, how often do they report feeling less stressed after a couple of months, or does that come up? Because it sounds like it it would.
Yes, yes. It was like I worked with one couple years ago, and he really wanted to move to a bigger house. They lived in a townhouse. They had 3 kids, and he wanted to move to a bigger house. She had family in Texas, we're in Northern Virginia, and she wanted them to come and visit more often. And, but in the townhouse, it was a little tough, and he thought if we get a bigger house, we'll have more space that can come more often. But she was really, really nervous about it. And she really didn't think they could afford it. And we sat down and we, went over, they had already had a cash flow management. We were putting the pieces together, and I showed her they could afford it. And she started crying because really what was underneath all that was the fact that she didn't think she deserved that nice big house. And tears were coming down because we kind of came to that naturally. It was an organic moment that just happened, that it really wasn't. It was a little bit about knowing you could afford it. That was true. But it was also about, now that I know I can afford it, what else is that blockage? Why am I not like, yay, yay. And then that came out. I didn't think that, will I be looked upon by my family negatively because now I have this big house, or am I allowed to have this? She did not grow up with money. So then that was part of her money story, was a sense of struggle, near poverty, things like that. And her husband was great. He was very patient and and understanding, and but that had to come out. And then once she kind of, I guess she kind of released it after that. Transition to the new house was still tough. You know, they had the new daycare and different things like that. But the husband took on a lot of the responsibilities, solved and took on a lot of the responsibilities of that transition and said, I will do X, Y, and Z to make that happen. So really it was a neat, loving kind of coming together of a couple and their relationship with money, and so
Beautiful. Oh, thank you
yeah,
for sharing that story. It's
sure.
so touching. So let's talk about, we're talking about couples already. Let's talk about some 4 great tips of how to manage your finances with a partner, so that you can decrease your stress, just like this wonderful woman did, and all of that.
Well, in my experience with couples, there tends to be, and they can be extremes of these, but there tends to be one that's a little more of a spender and one's a little more of a saver. And there are other types as well. But let's just say those two are the big two. And it doesn't mean one needs to be, a spendthrift and the other is, a frugal thrift. There's just sort of ranges in there. And the main thing is to come up with a system, and that both sides, again, know where their money is going. And you don't want me to go into details of the system, right?
Well, so you have the spender and the saver dynamics. How do you get them to see each other's point of view?
Well, first we go over 2 months worth of their accounts, their bills and their discretionary, and then I separate them out on a spreadsheet, and then we track it down to what really are your bills this month. What are your monthly bills? Electric, gas, mortgage, not food, not gas for the car. Your car payments. We get those set up separate. Then we look at what I call discretionary. And yes, I know you need to buy groceries, but that amount can fluctuate. So I call that's in the discretionary category. 1 week you can spend whatever, $200 at the grocery store, and the next week you might only need, $50 to kind of fill in some things. All right. So that's a moving target. I don't like putting moving targets in my bill pay. Yes, I know the water bill might be a little higher or lower each month, but I want those moving targets to be separate. So same thing with gas for your car, same thing for, your Walmart run, whatever. So we separate those out, and then we take each paycheck and we figure out what goes into which account to pay for the things that, on a per paycheck basis. So that's where it gets a little technical. That's the transition. The transition time is the hardest time because it's not coming up with a good plan. That's the problem. I think people could come up with great plans all the time. It's transitioning to that new plan that is very painful, because I might meet them in the middle of the month and they've already paid X, Y, and Z, but they still have, ABC to pay, and like, where are we? How much do we put into that bill pay account? How much do we put in the discretionary? And then how do you each need your own personal discretionary? So we're setting up some new accounts. We're figuring out how much needs to go where. It takes some time. You don't get it right the first time. It's not clear. As we walk through this transition, they go, I need more money in the discretionary because of, blah, blah, blah. So we make some adjustments. And so it's the transition period that is the most challenging. Once they're on the other side, I had one woman say, wow, this is really, I feel really good. Your paycheck comes in and you move it to certain pieces of it to certain accounts. And then she goes, once you move it, the burden's lifted, it's taken care of. The bill pay is automatically, the bills are paid because we set that up to be an automatic bill pay. The only thing you're looking at is that discretionary to make sure, gee, do we have enough money to go out to eat or not? It's not going to be, gee, I have my mortgage due. You're not doing a lot of mental math, which is what most people do when they do what I call the one pot system, where you pay everything out of the one thing, mortgage and groceries and eating out coming out of one pot. No, you need at least 2 separate pots. so you're not stressed out. And that's the other thing. Once you know your bills are paid, you feel like, and you have a plan where it's kind of automatically happening, it's a huge burden relief that you just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, again, two couples, a couple, they both now know where their money's going. They know how it's paid. Okay. And so if if something happens to, one spouse, the other spouse has a pretty good idea where things are, where the money's going, what's paid when, and who needs that stress if they've lost their loved one? Who needs the stress of having to make sure the bills are paid? I mean, um, that's critically important, especially in families where maybe the husband feels he should take that responsibility alone, and so she doesn't have to worry about the finances. I have it covered, honey. It's not that you don't trust that he has it covered. It's just that you need to know, the wife needs to know in case something happens. Okay. Also, she needs to make sure she's got enough life insurance on him if she's a stay-at-home mom, so that if something happens to him, her bills will continue to be paid, you know. So there's a lot of communication. It's not about trust or not trust. It's about communication and understanding to sort of prevent issues. God forbid something should happen to the main breadwinning spouse who might also be managing the money. Now, I've also come across spouses where one made the most of the money, but the other spouse managed it. Go with your strengths, right? There are strengths, that we all have, and especially when it comes to money. And this one guy said, she's a much better money manager. I totally trust her. But he did say, at some point in their marriage, as she was managing the money, he did say, she knew he liked his annual fishing trip with the guys, so she'd always make sure she had money for that, and a family vacation, she'd make sure she'd put money away for that, and at any time he could ask her, and they did. They would look at the however she kept it, and he was impressed, and he's like, thank you, So, all right. So where are we here?
So
System.
we have
So
spender and saver. We have a system. You talked about the system. Both sides understanding the system is highly important. And how important is it to have a regular check-in between a couple, and how often should that be?
good question. Yes. So it's not just creating the system, it's both sides having a reasonable understanding of the system. And I would say monthly maybe, but some couples might want to do it weekly just because then it's quicker, right? How do we do this week? It might be 15 minutes a week once you've got the system and you've transitioned over to the system. It might be 15 minutes a week if you just kind of go over it, or once a month, you might do it for a half hour, just kind of looking at what happened, what was our wins, where did we kind of slip off a little bit, how do we pay for the slip up, because a financial cash flow system is a dynamic system. I mean, yes, I talk about set it and forget it for the most part, but there's always life bombshells that happen. And that's, again, the reason to have an emergency fund, that we've all heard so much about, but probably don't have. And I help you work that up too, so that when you do need new tires on the car and you got to spend, 500 or 600 bucks, you got something. So again, that stress is not, in the pit of your stomach, putting it on the credit card and then not knowing how you're going to really pay that credit card back. So, so meeting regularly, and just, it makes it easier. It makes it, it's, I don't know, it just creates a communication, another line of communication. I think any marriage, will not suffer from regular communication. So.
Funny is you've got my number more than once by accident. One, I have a rebate that I just forgot about and you reminded me.
See?
My dishwasher.
I worked with one woman. She was single mom, but her kids were just about launched. They were just about out of college. So it was a little easier. It gets a little easier when they're in college, but you're still putting out money. Let me tell you. And we were going over finances. She's like, oh, my ex was supposed to pay me this. I need to reach out to him for that. Oh, my ex was supposed to, and like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I paid for my fee just by helping her find these things, a reminder of these things. And she did go back and he did pay whatever, yeah, a lot of times there's a lot of found money that once you get in the weeds, you find, but you're not going to find it up here, typically.
Yeah. And you're not going to find it by hiding from it either, for sure.
Right. I think
Number
it's a lot of
two,
fear. I
go
think it's
ahead.
a lot of fear of getting into the weeds. It's a time
Yeah.
suck. It's a mind suck. It just sucks. And that's what we and so,
Yeah.
but really, I think again, doing it with a third party, don't mean to trump my own horn, but doing it with a third party, it's a different dynamic than a couple trying to figure it out themselves. Again, it's just, if I tell people, look, I'm sure you've tried it. If it was going to work, you wouldn't be in this current financial state that you're in.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
tried doing it together, now several different times, several different ways. Now let's try something different. Let's not try to repeat things that don't work. Let's try something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we know about couples is that we come together most frequently because we're trying to heal a wound, and that person has the medicine that we need. And when you bring money into the mix, it just kind of supercharges all of that. So having somebody like you working them every step of the way, it removes the shame of, I feel triggered, I feel upset, I feel sad, I don't feel like I deserve a house, I don't feel like, all of these things can come up without all that shame, because you don't care, like, other than you care that you want that person to have a happy life and have a, feel stable in their finances. You don't care if they don't feel desert, like, it doesn't bother you, none of that bothers you, there's no mutual trigger that's happening, because you're there kind of going, well, okay, what do you really want? Let's
Mhm.
be honest about that. And that is probably the most important piece of all of this, is getting to those root issues. I mean, the system is important, right? But like you said, any system could work if they were actually using it right. The reason we don't use it right is also that we have all this other stuff going on.
Yes, you bring
So
up a
yeah.
good point, and I wanted to mention that the very first meeting I do with people, and I ask them um, these background questions. I send the background questions ahead of time just so they can mentally prepare. But one of the things I want to find out is what messages of money did you get growing up, either caught or taught? Okay. How did
Yep.
that affect you? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself? The term I hear all the time. I had one client, her dad constantly told her, you're not good with money. You're not good with money. Well, we all know now that turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You tell your kids something their whole life, that's what they're gonna end up doing. So words have power. We're seeing that now. I'm a boomer, Jan. We grew up with sticks and stones will break my bones, and names will never hurt me. Now we know that that's bull crap. So uh I bring some of those things out. And a lot of times the one spouse or other be like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that,
Mhm.
but I spend a good amount of time on that because that drives everything, what's
Mhm.
driving your bus, whether you know it or not, and I can then help them understand some of their decisions or some of their reluctance to a certain transition to the system based upon understanding where they came from, the messages of money. Also ask about where are you in the birth order. I find that interesting. So it's like and I work with a lot of therapists. I have many clients who are therapists who are women. And the questions I ask at the beginning, they're like,
Hmm.
oh, these are questions I ask my clients. I go, all interconnected. Now, after a while, they're like, well, when do we get to and we go, okay, now we're going to click over to the practical side. We're not
Yeah.
going to observe our navels all meeting, but I said, are important to me. And now we're going to get to the practical side. And actually, what I find is once we get all that out, they are really ready to look at the practical side.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of
Yes.
a release. I mean, I'm not saying there's healing going on, but there's a release, there's a communication, and then we get with the practical side. And then later on, I can pull out, well, you know, you might be feeling this way about this because of, you know, this is how you grew up with this and that. And they're like,
Mm,
oh, I never put those two together, you know. So yeah, we're holistic beings, right? With lots of things interconnected. We don't know
yeah.
how interconnected they are. So
Yeah. And that's a great segue. Nancy Del Gallagher, my mom, and I are collaborating on the practical and the energetic and the emotional, all of that in one pretty package. So make sure that you are um, staying current with the show so that way you can get the information on that if that sounds like it's something that's interesting to you. We don't really know what it looks like yet, but we're going to take all this stuff and put it together, and we'll all have a fun time doing it. Who would have thought that money conversations could be fun? They can.
fun, I don't know. Fun's a rather, let's say that they can be combative or fun. I don't know. Did I make this fun? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is fun. This
Oh,
is the thing we're going to be doing together is going to be fun.
yes.
I love talking about money. I could talk about money all the
Wow.
time. Oh my gosh.
I learn a lot about you too. You learn a lot about your adult children, you know, as they grow and move through their life journey, you know,
Mm.
and you know, as it becomes like what's that phrase I saw somewhere? It was on a Hallmark card, you know, you're not just my friend, you're not just my daughter, you're my frauder. I didn't say that to you. Did you not save that card, Jan? Really?
Not the first time you said this. This is not the first time you said this.
Oh, okay.
I know I knew where you're going with this. Oh my goodness. So in the meantime, though, I'm sure people are going to be clamoring to come and work with you, Mom. So how can people find you?
So you can go to my website at springhousefinancial.com. Okay, and there's a story on there on why I called it Springhouse Financial, and what's a Springhouse. I offer a 30-minute consultation just to kind of get an overview of what the issue is. And then also you can email me at nancy@springhousefinancial.com.
Yep.
Love to
And
talk.
you're also on Instagram,
Yes.
Springhouse Financial, right?
Yeah, I don't know what, yeah, yeah, so I have someone help me with that and I'm still like trying to figure that out. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Springhouse Financial.
There you go.
Love to hear from people, and so let's have a conversation.
It sounds good. What is one thing that you want people to hear from you? What's one random snippet that you want the last thing that people remember you by?
I think I would come back to life is full of second, third, and fourth
Yeah.
chances. Don't give up. I look back to different obstacles I had over my life and I'm like, wow, how did I get through that? Thank you, Jesus. Get me through that. And thank you for hope. Hope is such a wonderful thing. You know, and without hope, it's bleak. But I want
Yeah.
people to know that there is hope. There is hope. There are a way out. And sometimes you just need a little help.
Beautiful. Chills.
Thank you. You're a great interviewer. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you, and I'm honored that you would ask me to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you, Mom. All right. Well, there she goes. There's Nancy Del Gallagher, springhousefinancial.com. She's my mom, but really she's amazing at what she does, and that's why she's on this. So everyone have a great day, and we will see you all next time, and I love you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.